Yes, sir. Good evening, all. I am Patty Roberts, Deputy Director with your City of Port St. Lucie Parks and Recreation Department. And I am happy to be here on this 10th session of Healthy You, a series of conversations, which is discussing challenging topics which affect many of us. A few general housekeeping items, please. At the registration table, there is a voluntary sign-in sheet for anyone who wishes to leave their name. Lastly, there will be an opportunity for questions at the very conclusion of our presentation. Those of you in person, the questions are easy. Simply raise your hand and we'll call on you at the end of the presentation. For those of you attending remotely, simply choose the Q&A icon, and that will let us know there's a question in the queue, and we'll address those at the end of the presentation. I'd ask all to turn off their cell phones, and for those of you in person, the restrooms here at the Community Center are located right outside these doors to the left. Healthy You is a program that's very near and dear to my heart. The topics that we'll be discussing in our series of conversations over the next few months are ones that are very real and sensitive in nature. Topics such as depression, anxiety, domestic violence, trauma-informed care, suicide prevention, and opioid use disorder are tough conversations to have. But if they're never talked about, the issues remain lurking and diseases remain untreated. I have a very personal interest in exploring many of the topics that we'll be discussing. Just 1,080 days ago, and yes, I do count in days, my son Danny Roberts died from a heroin overdose that had been laced with fentanyl. Danny died right here in Port St. Lucie. He was 22 years old, and he had fought for 8 years with his battle with addiction and other mental health issues. We as his parents were right there with him throughout his entire struggle, and we fought for him, we fought against him, and we fought with him. But the outcome remains the same. Danny is dead from this horrible disease, and I miss him with every breath I take. But looking back on Danny's struggles as he sought treatment at more than 14 rehabs and recoveries along the way, he was diagnosed with depression, anxiety, and bipolar disorder. But tonight's topic is eating disorder. And that one is very important to all of us, I think, and even to me at my age. Self-esteem among young women, even growing up as I did, was a definite issue. And I myself was the byproduct of bias, in that I had an older sister, all of 2 years older, who was significantly, always more petite than I. And relatives, friends, and family would consistently comment, you know, the petite one and the large-boned one. And that stays with you throughout all your formative years and is part of me as an adult. It impacted me deeply and was a factor in the very makeup of my personality. So throughout these days of COVID-19 and prior to the pandemic, the world in which we live in is moving faster than ever before. Technology, the way people are joining us tonight, for instance, has exploded, and our means of connectivity is vastly different from how our parents before us connected and interacted with society. So today, it is my extreme pleasure to share with you an important message from a subject matter expert on the topic of eating disorders. Dr. Anushka Marshall is the Chief Clinical Officer with Tykes and Teens of Palm City, Florida. Allow me a little background on Dr. Marshall. Dr. Marshall is a licensed clinical psychologist and certified addictions professional. She received her doctorate and master degrees in clinical psychology from the Florida Institute of Technology. Dr. Marshall has worked full-time at Tykes and Teens for 15 years. Since that time, she has spent her career providing psychotherapy services to children and families of Tykes and Teens with a focus on teen issues and substance and alcohol abuse. Dr. Marshall has also maintained a private practice since 2010, supporting adults with mental health needs. Dr. Marshall has been a guest lecturer for various psychology-related graduate and undergraduate courses. She is an adjunct faculty at Kaiser University and has consulted on various community task forces. Currently, as the Director of Prevention Services at Tykes and Teens, Dr. Marshall is in charge of overseeing and developing a series of activities geared toward prevention of mental health and substance abuse issues for children. Such projects include community psychoeducational seminars, workshops for mental health professionals, social awareness campaigns, overseeing classroom-based prevention curriculum, developing free and fun activities for tweens and teens in the community, such as the Tykes and Teens Mindfulness Yoga Series, and much more. What drives her work is the motivation to help contribute to the creation of an overall healthier community, because we all can benefit from this. And so without further ado, allow me to introduce and welcome to the City of Port St. Lucie, Dr. Anushka Marshall.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here tonight. Eating disorders is a topic that's kind of taken the back burner lately because there have been so many other things in the forefront of our minds. However, this is such a great time to revisit this topic because there are a lot of things the general public do not understand about eating disorders that will potentially shock you tonight. First, I kind of wanted to see what your eating disorder awareness was, and I have a few questions to ask to see, what your thoughts might be. The first question is, the best known environmental contributor to the development of eating disorders is, and I'm going to ask the audience, any ideas? What might be the one environmental factor? I'm sorry? Social media, that's a great answer. It's social cultural idealization of thinness, which can absolutely include social media and what people post, right? That perfect filter that is out there, right? That young ladies are using that is, we'll see, of course, the impact of later on and as the youth grow up. But yes, absolutely, that incorporates that. By age what girls start to express concerns about their own weight and shape? Any thoughts? Patty, what do you think?
I'll answer for myself, and then I'll answer what I think it is.
Sure.
I distinctly remember back at the age of about 5 or 6, being in a dance class with my and please let me preface this. I love my older sister to death. I do. It was not anything, it was just two kids performing, But that's age 5 is when I remember there being a distinction between myself and my older sister. But I'm going to say the age is maybe 6.
Age of 6? You are right on the money.
Ooh.
And again, that might shock some people, but yes, I mean, that if that doesn't break your heart, I don't know what does, right? I mean, who thinks that a 6-year-old even considers this? But yes, and that memory is very consistent with, what is the reality. Blank is the most common eating disorder in the United States. Anyone? Bulimia? Actually,
we have bulimia from the audience. Dr. Marshall?
From the audience. Actually, no, but good guess. It's binge eating disorder, which again might make sense because generally I know that in the United States we do have an epidemic of obesity. So, we might want to consider how much does an actual eating disorder perhaps contribute to that. Over blank of teenage girls and blank of teenage boys use unhealthy weight control behaviors like skipping meals, fasting, smoking cigarettes, or vaping, of course, vomiting, using laxatives, anything you can imagine that's an unhealthy way of controlling weight. So what of teenage girls and what of teenage boys? Any thoughts? Half of girls, and how many of boys do you think? A third of boys? Well, you are right on the money. It is a very smart crowd we have with us tonight.
It is.
So yes, absolutely. But what a staggering statistic, right? A half, So you think of if you have 10 young ladies in front of you, half of those young ladies potentially are doing unhealthy things to control their weight. Mm-hmm. That's incredible. Eating disorders have the highest what rate of any mental illness?
if you say fatality, I'm going to be floored.
Mortality rate.
Oh,
That's right. And a lot of people don't realize that, which is, again, why I think it's so important to revisit this topic that, again, has taken the back burner. You know, a lot of people think, oh, depression must have a lot of the fatalities, or, you know, maybe schizophrenia and one of the more severe mental disorders, but it's actually not. And a lot of the contributing factors to why eating disorders have such a large fatality rate is, number one, of course, there's a lot of medical complications that come with eating disorders, unlike other mental illnesses, as well as individuals that have eating disorders are so committed to the disorder that it's very tough to be motivated to step out of it. So it is very heartbreaking. So tonight's objectives is I want our audience to understand what are the warning signs to some of the most common eating disorders, how are they treated, and what can we do to prevent them? You know, individually for ourselves as adults, and if you have little ones at home, what you can do as a family. And the need for eating disorders treatment is very high in the sense that studies show that over the last few decades, there actually has been a significant increase in the prevalence of eating disorders. Again, other things have taken the forefront of our thinking so much, but you know, this is not to be ignored or dismissed, and that we see this prevalence actually increase in our state. I do have a chart here from our health department, and actually St. Lucie County, where we are at tonight, is actually better than the state, but as you can see for the state line, it is you know, increasingly going up, and who knows what will happen as we see the data from 2020 and 2021. I imagine it will probably continue to go up just because of the stress of, you know, with COVID and things such as that, and the other stresses that follows with that. But I thought that was very interesting for the county we are in today, that that line has kind of stabilized. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to that. And I'd be curious to know what kind of contributing factors in this community are that, you know, hold that line steady. So some risk factors for eating disorders, some perfect storm things that when present could increase the likelihood of an individual developing an eating disorder. Certainly low self-esteem and emotional concerns such as depression, anxiety, anger, stress, loneliness, and things like that. Feelings of inadequacy, which again go along with self-esteem, troubled personal relationships, having a tough time expressing emotions, history of being teased and ridiculed for size and weight. A lot of people, you know, kind of, Patty was speaking to this, but people don't really realize how instrumental those moments can be in developing an eating disorder, whether it's being bullied at school or being compared to a sibling or, you know, another family member. That is huge. That can impact individuals' feelings about size and weight in an astronomical way. History of abuse, any type of abuse, whether physical or sexual. Buying into a culture that glorifies thinness or muscularity or a body being a particular way, buying into very narrow definitions of what it is to be beautiful or what it is to be, you know, perfect, having chemical imbalances, and this is actually under research, so to be continued on this piece. I believe more stuff will come out on that topic, but you know, just to let you know, there are some studies that are looking into that of what neurologically potentially might be happening. Buying into cultural norms that, you know, that allow people to weigh a value of an individual on their physical appearance, and of course that also relates to cultural norms as well. So like, for example, I remember working with a woman that was from Jamaica, and in their culture, it was the bigger, the more beautiful. So the women there actually ate specific types of, instead of dieting shakes, right? They were eating shakes to gain the weight, which of course is not a healthy thing to consider. But again, those cultural norms can be extremely strong. And of course, like a lot of mental health disorders, a family history of having that disorder also creates a potential factor. for a child developing that as well. And what are some warning signs? What can you look for within an individual, or whether you're looking at your own child? What are some things that might be indicative of them having an eating disorder or developing an eating disorder? For anorexia, as you can see, it's quite a few. The items you see in blue are ones that you see consistent in several different eating disorders. So you see abuse of laxatives, diet pills, or other types of unhealthy ways of controlling weight, excessive compulsive exercise. Now, exercise is healthy, but what I like to say, sometimes that which nourishes me can also destroy me, so too much of a good thing can be detrimental. High levels of anxiety and depression. I mentioned low self-esteem as a risk factor before. Self-injurious behavior and feelings of guilt after eating or shame after eating. But additionally to that, of course, you're going to see a significant weight loss and a constant dissatisfaction despite that weight loss, that the individual might still see themselves in a different way, where their perception is just off as to what they're looking at when they look in the mirror. Intense fear of gaining weight, preoccupation with calories, constant calorie counting. Moment that individual looks at food, they think of the calories within it. Denial of low weight, or even that a problem exists, which of course you see in a lot of type of mental health issues. Withdrawal from friends and different activities, not being as excited about particular activities. A lot of times you see their hair growing thin or dull. And also one of the things that can happen is this development of this hair growth all over the body. That's this peach fuzz, and that is a response to the body is so good at trying to fix what we do to it. So that peach fuzz is developed in order to increase the insulation for heat inside the body, because when you have low fat within your body, you're not good at keeping itself warm. So therefore, the counter to that is you develop this peach fuzz along your skin, and that includes the face area. So again, the cold intolerance, of course, tiredness and fatigue if you're not getting sufficient amount of nutrients, excuses for not eating. A lot of times you'll find an individual cutting their food up in very, very small portions and moving their food around quite a bit, so it appears as though they've eaten more than they actually had. Food rituals, which can include that kind of behavior as well. Dramatic mood swings, which again is related to not having enough nutrition, pale appearance, and yellowish of skin. So that's quite a lot. So let's see. The treatment for anorexia, and you are going to see, again, consistencies in a lot of these. In blue are the ones that are similar to the treatment within other eating disorders. So you're going to see 4 things consistently in the treatment of eating disorders, like what type of individual psychotherapy, what type of psychiatric treatment, and you're going to see nutritional and medical monitoring in all of these as well. And it's so important because these disorders come with medical complications, that it's always important to have all these 4 experts in place when an individual is in treatment for an eating disorder. Warning signs of bulimia, again, you can see the blue is consistent with the ones that I had already mentioned, because there is a lot of overlap. And of course, binging and purging. Binging and purging doesn't necessarily have to be involve vomiting. Sometimes the purge could be an excessive episode of exercise, like an 8-hour exercise stint at the gym, or like a 12-mile run after eating. Well, probably not right after eating excessive amount of food. But sometimes the purge may not necessarily involve vomiting. So that could also be in the form of overuse of laxatives. Secretive eating. So individuals, I know sometimes might buy up a ton of food and then go to perhaps a different place to eat it away from individuals. You would not be able to witness the binge, because that's usually done very secretively. Preoccupation with food, similar to, again, like the other ones. Weight fluctuations. With individuals with bulimia, you actually don't see necessarily a emaciation or an individual looking overly thin. A lot of times they might look quite average in size, and they might, and again, their weight could fluctuate from being lower than the average to higher than the average, but you don't usually see a consistent emaciated look about individuals with bulimia. Swollen glands and cheeks, discoloration in teeth, and actually a lot of issues with teeth where the enamel is being broken down. Broken blood vessels around the face, again, most likely caused by vomiting, and calluses on the back of the hands or knuckle, again, because of induced vomiting, sore throat, along the same lines. The tricky thing about bulimia is that externally an individual could look quite healthy, but what's happening internally to their body could be disastrous. I remember with my career with Tyson Teens, I had a young lady who was about the age of 14. She was an athlete. If you looked at her, she looked healthy. She had beautiful long hair. You wouldn't have think this young lady was ill. However, she was for a little under a year binging and purging on a daily basis. When she came in for the evaluation, one of the immediate things that we request, particularly in eating disorders, is for them to be evaluated by their primary care physician and let the primary care physician know that this is happening. So after the primary care physician ran a series of tests and blood work on this young lady, he said that she can absolutely not continue doing her sport because she is in danger of fracturing a bone because of the damage that is happening internally. So that's something to keep in mind with individuals with this type of a disorder. And as you can see, you see a pattern as far as what treatment is concerned. You're always going to want to see these 4 professionals, whether it's therapy, psychiatry, nutrition, and medical monitoring. Now, again, this isn't necessarily that, an individual, let's say, purges once and all of a sudden they have bulimia. These are individuals with the diagnosis diagnosed by a professional. Now, that's not to say that that's, an individual that has binged and purged one time isn't something to be alarmed by. It's always something to, go have a professional or evaluate. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to involve a psychiatrist, a nutritionist, and a medical monitoring. So I just wanted to, take a step back and mention that these are for cases where individuals do actually have the diagnosis that has been given to them by a licensed professional. And of course, warning signs of binge eating disorder in blue are the ones that are consistent with the ones previously mentioned. Eating large quantities of food without purging, even when not hungry. Feeling a lack of control over food, like you can't really stop once you started the binge. Eating until uncomfortable or painfully full, where you feel like you can't move, get up, you just want to lay on your back like a turtle, although I do sometimes. I've had those moments sometimes. Weight gain fluctuations, again, individuals may not necessarily appear obese in these circumstances. Self-medicating with food, meaning that when they're going through something difficult, it is a binge can occur. Eating alone and secretive, again, much similar to the bulimia diagnosis, and hiding food. Treatment, as you can see, a lot of the same as with the other eating disorders. So when is it truly alarming and where the individual is high risk and should be, seen by someone as soon as possible? If their body mass index is 17 or under, that is a dire situation. Excessive exercise with low weight is a dire situation. Losing weight very quickly is dire. Inadequate fluid intake in combination of poor eating. We are human beings. We need water and food, or else our body starts to break down. And we're so brittle, if you really think about it. I think it's 3 days without water that, we start, getting a little wacky. Purging more than 1 time a day, finding blood in vomit, suicidal thoughts, and concerns expressed by the primary care physician after reviewing blood work. Those are situations where it is important to get with a professional as soon as possible. And of course, as everything, early identification shows the best results in treatment. Individuals that, like I'd mentioned earlier, individuals that have had their disorder progress end up getting extremely committed to their disorder, and it is extremely difficult to find the motivation to want help because they're so cuddled up with the disorder. And particularly, and this is one of those, this isn't where depression, where an individual wants to feel better and wants to get the help. In these circumstances, what the individuals want is to feel good about their bodies and to continue the pattern of behavior that they believe is going to get them there. So that's where it gets extremely tricky. And due to the potential lethality of these disorders and how complex they are, it is very important to seek an individual who treat eating disorders. And people may not realize, but eating disorder treatment is a specialization within either master's level or doctoral level therapists. And the reason for that is, and I would always request that if your child has been, or if an individual has been, even yourself, if you have been diagnosed with an eating disorder, it is best practice for you to receive care, or the individual to receive care from someone that has a specialization. It may not be enough to just see a therapist, even though they're licensed. I know myself that I have had to refer out because, I know my limitations and I don't have this particular certification and I want individuals to be well. So I would always refer to an individual that has a specialized training in this area. It is very important. So then what can you do to veer away from these issues developing later on? Again, when I reviewed the risk factors, who doesn't get anxious? Who doesn't, maybe sometimes get depressed? Who doesn't have stress in their, lives? So again, maybe all of us could relate to some of those risk factors, which is why it's so important to develop healthy habits early on. And one of my favorite healthy habit is incorporating mindfulness into your life and your space. And just a reminder, I know you've probably heard mindfulness ad nauseum. It's such a buzzword and continues to be, although it's great that it is. So the definition of it is a moment-to-moment awareness of one's experience in the moment without judgment. So that means you're fully present in the here and now, body, mind, sensations, emotions, fully in the here and now, and you're doing it with an open mind or a child mind, like you're looking at everything for the first time. Nothing's neither good nor bad, it just is, and that's the non-judgment piece. The reason why we stress this as an important health practice is that it does wonders with stress, reducing depression and even chronic pain. Individuals with cardiovascular issues have known to benefit, and it definitely increases your quality of life. And reason being is because individuals that live a lot in the future, what's next, what's tomorrow, what if, have a tendency of being more stressed and more anxious than the average bear. Individuals that live a lot in the past, meaning should've, could've, would've back then, sometimes can develop some emotions of feelings of depression. The healthiest and the place that feels best for us to be in is in the present moment. So the more time you spend in the here and now, the better you will feel. And you can use the technique of mindfulness during eating. And how do you do that? I know many people have probably heard this before. Please do not sit in front of the TV and mindlessly eat. And yes, I would absolutely say that is true. So taking the time with your meal, paying full attention to the experience, the colors, the smells, the textures, the temperature of the food, really taking it in, bit by bit. Paying attention to where your satiation is within your body, how full or hungry you are in that moment, and periodically checking that scale within yourself, not rushing food and limiting distractions, whether it's, not having your phone by you when you are having a meal. And coming back to the experience if you find yourself distracted. They actually use mindful eating in a lot of the treatment of eating disorders because individuals with eating disorders have learned to ignore their natural body's messages of I'm starving or I am full, stop. So by using mindfulness, it's almost a reconnection with the body and what your body's naturally telling you that it's needing or it's not needing in the moment. Being aware of what you are feeding your brain. Thoughts matter, and the thoughts you fill your brain with are going to not just impact your emotions, but your actions as well. So discouraging the idea that a particular diet, weight, or body size is going to equal any type of fulfillment for you or any type of happiness for you. There had been studies of where they rated individuals' happiness prior to a weight loss program and then following a weight loss program. So the individuals that, so within this weight loss programs, there were individuals that after the program were able to lose the weight and keep it off. They were able to lose the weight but put it back on. And there were individuals that, well, it didn't really, impact them. They found that the individuals that lost the weight, gained it back, or lost the weight were significantly less happier pre and post test than the individuals that the program wasn't really working on them. So again, falling away from that idea that this change in weight or body is going to bring some kind of happiness, because that's been proven over and over again that is quite false. Choosing to challenge your beliefs about thinness, weight loss, muscularity, what all that means, that one thing is more desirable than the other. Being aware of how you judge other people when you see others walking by, and what you might say in your brain or what you might say to others. Surrounding yourself with people that are positive and, being aware of the individuals around you that might be focused on appearances, their weight, or eating. Becoming a critical viewer of social media in general, and messages about body image. I think that currently they're doing a pretty decent job. We all know the new Dove commercials, right, with women celebrating all different types of bodies, and we see that more and more. However, with some of these Instagram, what do they call them, influencers? now you can be an influencer. You still see some of that, like perfection being portrayed as desirable. When in terms of supporting your family and your children with a healthy lifestyle and or body image, it is important to be in it together. So that means that if you have a child that perhaps is higher on the scale and you might have been informed by a physician that it would be a good idea for them to have, lose some weight, that we're not sitting around the dinner table and your child isn't getting a salad while everyone eats steak. That is not a good idea. When it comes to health, you want to be in it together as a family and not single out any individual within your family. So, and again, being consistent. So if you are, raising children in two households, being as consistent within those two households as you can, having we are a team in this, we're going to eat healthy together, we're going to start walking together, and again, making sure that the whole family is working on it, not just a single family member. Ways to foster a positive body image is appreciating all your body can do. Having a, awareness of you know, being able to move easily through this plane we call Earth, right? Being able to feed your body exercise. Those are all incredible miracles that we are able to do, and just having an appreciation of that can be really important. Reminding yourself what true beauty really is. Shutting down that negative self-talk when you feel it creeping into your brain. Wearing clothes that are comfortable. Don't buy something that's, you know, a size smaller because you really want to be that size smaller. And, you know, the biggest trick, especially, and women know this, right? The biggest trick is size whatever in one store is not going to be the same size in the other store. I feel like this is the biggest, like, trick that society has played on us women. I don't know if men have it the same because you guys are inches, right? It's 36-32. So 36-32 is going to be 36-32 here, and it's going to be 36-2. That is such crap. I can't believe you were going to say something, Patty.
No, I was going to agree wholeheartedly.
Right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
That is such, like, it makes me wonder, like, why they did that. Like, why can't we have it the same as men where, you know, one size is the same as the others? But I digress. Anyway, so does it really for men as well? Okay, really? Oh, all right, okay. But I bet it's not as bad as us. I bet it's not as bad. Anyway, so wear clothes that are comfortable for you and really accentuate, you know, what you have going on. And looking at yourself as a whole person, because at the end of the day, we are so much more than our bodies. Eating as a family is very important. You know, sometimes we have maybe the teenagers in the bedroom eating a meal. Maybe the little one is by the TV watching their favorite cartoon. Maybe mom's eating while standing up. You know, maybe dad's eating, you know, on his way, you know, back from work or wherever. Hopefully that wasn't too stereotypical what I just said. But in any case, sitting down and having family meal, again, it increases that idea of being mindful that you are present to your meal. And of course, that doesn't involve having cell phones next to you in your meal. Actually, a lot of studies show that families that sit down together during mealtime, the more they do that, the less likely their little ones actually end up using drugs or alcohol. The more likely they will have better grades in school. It's an interesting phenomenon that happens. It really is more related to the fact that when families are sitting down, they're more likely to connect as a family. So it's those family connections that really are the biggest prevention tool that, or, you know, in your prevention arsenal that you can have. So again, what a great, you know, opportunity here to be able to do that with your family, and at the same time, you know, not just preventing substance and alcohol use, but also preventing eating disorder type behavior. Letting the end goal be healthy eating and movement be healthy body, spirit, and mind instead of I'm going to lose that weight. What they found, again, individuals that start a health program with the intent of losing weight or changing their body versus individuals that start a weight loss or health program with the intent of feeling good and healthy, they actually end up being more successful, and their bodies end up changing anyway, but they end up being more successful than those that had that the eye on the prize was body, weight, shape, whatnot. So it works all around. And again, staying away from the idea that eating healthy and exercising is to lose weight. Viewing healthy eating and exercise as a gift to yourself, something to honor yourself. A lot of times when we think of the word diet, we go, oh, diet. What's the first, you know, 3 letters of that word? Die, right? Like this is punishment for you. And it's such, psychologically, it's such a bad habit. Like, why would you want to punish yourself? And again, that has such bigger implications down the line. You know, when we think of self-injurious behavior, you know, why would we, you know, do that through our food intake? Empowering. If you have little ones, let your child decide when they're full. I know that goes against what my Polish mama and dad did. I will tell you right now, and I know maybe a lot of old school parents, the same thing. You're going to sit here until you finish your meal. But again, so this goes back to, we want to teach kids to be able to listen to their bodies, and we want to honor what they believe their body is telling them as well. Teaching them how to monitor if they're hungry, getting hungry, full, comfortable when it comes to eating, and including them in meal planning and cooking, having, the mealtime be a celebration, like an event that, they get to participate in, and not is something that just is happening to them. And I spoke about this so that I can't say this word. I don't know why. Maybe Patty, you can help me. Satiety.
That is a tough one to say.
Okay. My excuse is my Polish is my first language. That's my excuse.
Well, I don't have that excuse, so I just can't pronounce it. Satiety. No.
It's satiated, right? But it's
Satiated?
Satiation. Yeah. Anywho, so how hungry you are.
How hungry you are.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, so the optimal time to eat and stop eating is when you're starting to feel hungry. It's a good time to have a meal. And when you're satisfied but could eat just a little bit more, that's a good time to stop. And that's probably the healthiest place to be, as well as what will regulate where your body shape, weight is supposed to naturally be. But a lot of times we wait until we're uncomfortably hungry or extremely hungry or starving. And sometimes we, overdo it. And I will, I'm not perfect. I will totally admit that sometimes I eat until I'm uncomfortable. I had pad thai last night. It's my, it's my weakness. You would be surprised to see how much pad thai I can eat. And so again, we're not all perfect, and it's not about thou must always do this, because, it's not about perfection, but again, a good habit to get into. And actually you can get this off of the University of Berkeley website in their wellness. There's a link down below. And there's actually many other ones, so choose your poison. Encourage use of healthy coping skills. So again, going back to those risk factors of, not being able to deal with emotions or having difficult emotions, we really want to stay away from regularly using a treat to feel better. Even though, again, we're not looking for perfection, because, sometimes, yes, that bowl of ice cream doesn't make us feel good after, a hard day, or, after a breakup or something like that. But we don't want to make it that's my go-to every time I am sad. And in using, and this is what I support parents doing with their children, and I don't know if I've said this in here before, but it never fails in working with individuals. People think that we have two emotions. We either feel good or bad, but good and bad are not feelings. They are categories of feelings. So really, it benefits us when we are able to increase our vocabulary with how we are feeling, because not only does it give us a richer experience of the emotion, because, for example, I can say I feel good, or I can say, I'm feeling satisfied, I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling content, I'm feeling interested, I'm feeling excited. So that's a much richer experience of life than saying, I feel good, right? So it's so important for, again, to really embrace those feelings that are so comfortable, and also on the other end of the spectrum with those feelings that are not as comfortable, to be able to have some insight. Not I feel bad, but I feel angry, and I feel used, and I feel, fill in the blank. So again, at both ends of that spectrum, it is good for us to have a nice vocabulary of feeling words, and what I always encourage parents to teach their littles as well. And again, incorporating mindfulness exercises in your daily self-care. So encourage a healthy relationship with food. Stop putting food into the good box or the bad box. What that usually does is it promotes the idea of shame. Like, oh, I was so bad today. Like, no, you weren't bad today. You ate something with less nutritional value, but it felt good, right? And some of those foods do feel good to eat, and that is okay. But the less we can, again, put those in those good, bad boxes, the better. and eat a wide range of food. Still enjoy those things, those pleasurable foods that that you enjoy, because the more, and it's interesting, they bring up another study. So they had individuals that were on a diet, a group of individuals that were on a diet, and they had a group of individuals that, you know, just ate regularly and, you know, weren't dieting or anything like that. And they gave them milkshakes. So which group do you think drank the most milkshakes? What do you think, Patty?
The one on the diet?
Yes, yes. So what happens is when we go ahead and we put our bodies in a state of denying what we're wanting, we end up going way overboard when we finally are, you know, succumbing to that desire. And but versus if we're just, you know, allowing ourselves that experience on a regular basis, we don't have the need to, you know, in that circumstance, binge, because that essentially is what it is. Make wellness a part of your lifestyle. Again, going back to the word diet, diets don't work. My gosh, it's such a huge industry. They make so much money off of people, and part of that is that you know, when you go on a diet, you don't just, all right, I'm good for the rest of my life because I took this great diet plan. No, I mean, Weight Watchers, even Weight Watchers, although I will say this, Weight Watchers is probably one of the better ones, only because there's no foods. It's all points, right? So that's, you know, that's one of the things I do like about it, but I still don't promote it. So anyway, so when you think about it, if you know someone that's been on Weight Watchers, how many times have they been on Weight Watchers? I know a couple individuals that have been on Weight Watchers that I think maybe 4 or 5 times they've been on Weight Watchers, because it works, but it's not sustainable. So that's why it needs to be a lifestyle. It needs to make something that makes sense to you, and that is not going to put your body into a state of discomfort. It's not going to make you feel like you are dying or punishing you. And again, beginning slow and baby steps, you know, maybe instead of, you know, drinking soda for lunch, you might only have soda at night, or probably better the other way around. Instead of having soda at night, maybe just having it during the day, where your body's really using those calories and all that good energy that's coming in. So again, it doesn't have to be huge, but it has to make sense to you and your world and your life. And again, always include the family in that plan, because we are in this together and we're not singling any person out. Even with parents, I think that mothers have an important role in this, because little girls are looking at their moms. I know personally, my mom was always on a diet. My mom was on a diet for as long as I have known her, which definitely as a teenager, you know, contributed to, you know, how I felt about myself and my body and things like that. So as a parent, it is important to, again, include the family. If you're thinking about a health style, like, let's include your entire family. Let's not have your daughter watch you, you know, miserable with a salad while everyone else is eating meatloaf and all that, you know, hearty good stuff. So for more information, here are some phenomenal websites that have a lot of great resources. Again, if you suspect that a child or yourself might have some difficulties, there's a place to chat. There's a place for doing a self-assessment. So again, these websites are wonderful. So that's the NEDA organization, National Eating Disorder Association, and then the Alliance for Eating Disorder Awareness, both very great resources. And again, I will say this, if you believe that you might have an issue, or someone in your family, a child, take them to a professional, have them evaluated, and know that the best course of action would be to have a specialist if they are provided with that type of a diagnosis. And I think that's all I have. How am I doing on time here?
You're doing great.
Okay, good.
What an important topic. I don't know about you guys, but I mean, this is huge, and everything that you talked about, and it's so relevant to years ago, and yet it's still relevant today. Mm-hmm. The whole diet discussion, mm-hmm. and the Weight Watchers, twice for me, mm-hmm. okay, and probably should have been more, but it just doesn't work. And so it's that
Yeah.
whole adoption of, you know what, this isn't working, let's find what is. And however that looks to you. And I have learned one thing through this last 3 years is, and I've learned that from our own fitness center staff, because it is their mission that, and the mentality and philosophy of our fitness centers, not pushing anything, but I'm just telling you, their philosophy is not how many repetitions can you do, how many miles on the treadmill, I'm probably not using the right terminology. It is simply well-being and self-care and how do you feel, and they've taught me that while I can't move like Dr. Marshall does, I'm moving, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yes,
All right.
yes.
So that's all very important, and that is so interesting in the eating disorder presentation. I mean, I was just thoroughly impressed. All the studies that you talked about still ring true today. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing that, Dr.
Yeah,
Marshall.
of course. And thank you so much for reminding me that about moving instead of exercising. Like, I love saying it that way instead of exercising. So exercising can have such an oppressive connotation to it. So, I mean, move in a way that your body feels good, you know? And I know I always say this, if I had to run in order to, you know, be healthy and fit, it wouldn't happen. And if you see me running, you should start running too, because chances are there's someone behind me doing something that I need to run away from. That's the only time you're going to see me running. So yeah, movement. I mean, that's wonderful. You know, I mean, even if it's just, you know, breaking down, you know, to a song that, you know, you have in the background. So just move. Don't even think about it as an exercise. Just move and feel good. Thank you for that reminder.
That's our fitness center staff.
Yeah.
They're phenomenal. So thank you, Dr. Marshall, so much for that presentation. It was so great. Do we have any questions either in person, or do I see anybody from Zoom with questions? I don't see any. I do want to just take a moment to talk about why Healthy You, why eating disorders, and Parks and Recreation. And I would just say, Dr. Marshall touched on it. And whether it's an eating disorder, whether it's an addiction, or whatever, the mental health issue, whatever is presenting itself, can be improved and should be improved through connectivity. And that's what Parks and Rec is here for. And so, as I mentioned, even our fitness centers, and I'm not here to sell members, that's not what we're here for. But again, it's that very practical message that you can improve your mental health. You can improve the you know, disease that you're struggling with through movement and through self-expression, through participation in programs. We have a lot in the city of Port St. Lucie that's free or very, very reasonably priced. So look us up. For those of you in person, I have given you a copy of our Inside the Outdoors publication. For those of you at home, I'm going to attempt to bring it up on the website here. It's called Inside the Outdoors. And here it goes. Right here. So here's our Inside the Outdoors publication that will have an A through Z guide that will tell you all that Parks and Recreation does. And please feel free to look at that and see if there's something that can connect you. And that's what Healthy You is all about, is just connecting people, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. And no matter whatever it looks like for you, just get up and move and come out and join us. A couple of things that I did want to chat about while I have the opportunity for the future of Healthy You. The next session number 11, where we'll be on the topic of bipolar affective disorder. That one's going to be near and dear to my heart as well. That session will be held right here in the same room and offered through Zoom as well on Wednesday, September 1st from 6:30 at 6:30 p.m. And I truly hope to see you all there. Before that date, the day before, the City of Port St. Lucie has our very first commemoration of International Overdose Awareness Day. This is being held on Tuesday, August 31st at 7 p.m. It's actually being held at the new boardwalk at the port, which is somewhat close to Botanical Gardens off of Westmoreland Boulevard. And the evening's going to be, it's a very, planned to be a very solemn and reverent event. And it'll begin with a candlelight procession along the boardwalk near the banyan tree. And it's about a 90-minute event. It will include live classical music, free light refreshments, and a reading of the names of the loved ones who have died from a drug overdose. So I welcome each and every one of you to come out and join us on August 31st at 7 p.m. And commemorate that day with us. I also wanted to mention, I'm 99% finished with programming for next year's Healthy You. And I just want to share a few of the topics that I have secured. Subject matter experts, just like Dr. Marshall. In fact, one of them she's coming back for, thankfully. But some of the topics that we'll discuss with subject matter experts are gender-based violence / human trafficking, domestic violence, Down's syndrome, the autism spectrum, dementia, opioid epidemic awareness, suicide prevention, bullying, and then we'll revisit depression and anxiety as two separate sessions. So look for those in 2022. We're excited to extend the programming into 22, and we look forward to seeing everyone as much as possible back for any of our events and all of them. So without further ado, oh, my bad. I've got to get back to it. Avi, I lost it. Read me the question, please, and I apologize to the... Okay, see? No, I'm kidding. Just kidding. The internet timed out. That's what happened. All right. This question is for Dr. Marshall. What does Dr. Marshall think of the new, I'll spell it, capital WEGOVY, and then in parentheses, SEMAGLUTIDE?
I can't. I need to look at it. May I look
Come
at it?
on over.
Okay.
Right here. Dr. Marshall says she's not heard of that. Did you want to share? I don't see anything coming through. Did you want to share anything about what that term actually means? Maybe it'll jog Dr. Marshall. It's a new chronic weight management medication approved by the FDA. FDA.
Yeah. So that's a great question, actually. Well, I think it depends on going back to, I guess I use the example of gastro surgery, right? The lap band and things like that. Prior to receiving that type of a surgery, it is a requirement, I believe still a requirement, that an individual is evaluated by a licensed professional to ensure that there isn't a type of eating disorder prior to the lap band surgery. Because chances are that if that is the case and there isn't treatment for it, that surgery will not be productive, and potentially, there could be a life-threatening situation because of the complication with an eating disorder type of diagnosis. I would think that for that type of medication, I would recommend the same thing, that, that if there is an underlying eating disorder type of situation, that a medication like that could potentially complicate matters and, be detrimental to the health of the individual. That would probably be what I would have to say about something like that, if that makes sense.
Thank you. I hope that answers the inquirer's question. Any more questions? All right. I think we're done for the night here, and I want to thank everyone. Great questions coming in through the Q&A and participation in-house here. So thank you all for coming out to Healthy You. Thank you to Dr. Marshall. Thank you all.